Welcome to Saucy Math. This is a video about inequalities and intervals, which basically are ways to describe sets of numbers. So what I'm going to do here is go through a few different types of inequalities and then translate those into intervals to show you what the interval notation looks like and how that corresponds with the inequality notations. All right, so, and basically these are two different ways to give the same exact information. Right, so you might think, why do we need two different ways if they're telling us the same information? Basically, it's because mathematicians want to torture us and make us learn extra stuff that's really just totally unnecessary. All right, so for our first inequality, a is less than x is less than b. Right, so x here, our variable, can be any number between these two endpoints a and b. Right, the less than symbols mean that those endpoints, the a and the b, whatever numbers those happen to be, are not included in our interval, right? They're not included in our set of numbers. So to translate that into interval notation, whenever the numbers are not included, we use parentheses to represent that, right? So our left side here is a, so I put a, comma, and then whatever's on the right side, whatever number that is, in this case it's a b, which I know that's a letter, not a number. So whatever our numbers are on the end of our inequality, we just put them in the same order, a, comma, b, right? The left one, comma, the right one. And then we just decide, for interval notation, there's two things we can put around these numbers. We can either put parentheses or square brackets. And it all depends on whether or not these numbers are actually included in the interval. Right? So like I was saying, for this inequality, a is less than x is less than b, right? It's not less than or equal to a or b, so those numbers are not included, and when those endpoints are not included, in the interval notation we wrap them in parentheses. All right, so the interval notation, parentheses a, comma, b, close parentheses, means that x can be any number between a and b, but not including a or b. All right, and if we put those on a graph, right, since those endpoints are not included, I put a on the left and b on the right. I use open circles, that indicates that the points are not included, and then I darken in the line between them. All right, so the just less than symbol translates into the parentheses in the interval notation, translates to the open circles when we put it on the graph. All right, the next one we have here, a is less than or equal to x is less than or equal to b. Right, so this time, both of our inequalities involve that equal to sign, which means both of our endpoints now are actually included. Right, so to write this in interval notation, I start the same way. The left number, a, comma, the right number, b. And since both of these have the equal to sign underneath the less than symbol, that means both are included. And when our endpoints are included in interval notation, we represent that with a square bracket. All right, so it's square bracket, a, comma, b, square bracket. That means x can be any number between a and b, and the square bracket means a and b can be included in that interval. And when we put that on the graph, since our endpoints are included, we represent that on the graph with a closed circle. So we'll put a on the left, b on the right. Right? Our numbers are always going in the same order, left, right, a, b, a, b, a, b. So you never have to mix them up that way, which is nice. Makes it a little bit easier. Right, so now since those endpoints are included, I use filled in circles to represent that on the graph. Right, and the real reason that we use interval notation sometimes instead of the inequality notation is just because it's more concise. Right? Rather than writing out all these less than or equal to symbols, we just put the two numbers and then parentheses or brackets. It's saying the same thing but using less symbols, and just it's a little bit quicker to write it. The next inequality, a is less than x is less than or equal to b. So in this case, right, we have a and b as our endpoint. So just like before, when I do interval notation, I do a, comma, b. Right, it's always the left one, comma, the right one. But this time, the left one we see a is not included, right, because it's just a is less than x. So since that's not included, it gets the parentheses. But then the b is included, right? X is less than or equal to b. So since x can equal b, in the interval notation, I need to put that square bracket there, and that denotes that that last number there is included, right? X can equal that b. And then when I put that on the graph, same rules as before, a is not included, open circle for the a, b is included, so a closed circle for the b. And then just fill in the line in between them. Right, so when you're doing the inequality intervals and graphs, right, just the less than symbol translates to the parentheses, which translates to the open circles. Right, the less than or equal to symbols translate to the square brackets, which translates to the filled in circles. Right, those are basically the only rules you need to know to go from inequality to interval notation to the graph notation. It's just a matter of learning those rules and making sure you remember what they are. All right, the last couple we have here are a little bit different. And if you notice, they're different because we only have one side of the inequality. Right, for this one, we just have a is less than x. There's no number on the right side here. All right, so what do we do when there's no number on the right side? Well, for interval notation, what that means is a is less than x, right? So a is the smallest number we can have. X is going to be bigger than that, but there's no end point on the right side, which means x could go all the way up to infinity. All right, so if there's no number on the right side here, basically it's almost like this would be a is less than x is less than infinity. And then infinity becomes that second number that we can use. All right, a is not included, right? So that endpoint's not included, it gets the parentheses. Infinity always is going to get a parentheses. Right, remember, the square bracket means that that endpoint is included, but you can never actually reach infinity. Like, there's no actual number which is equal to infinity. So you can never actually get there, which means you can never actually include infinity in your interval. So infinity always gets the curved parentheses. And then when you put that on the graph, right, you start at a is not included, so it's an open circle just like before. And then there's no end point on the right side, so we just kind of draw the arrow going off to the right, and that just means that it's going to go forever, right? There's no point like there were on these other ones where it stops. That arrow just means it goes on forever off in that direction. Right, and then the last one we have here, x is less than or equal to b. Right, so now we don't have the left side of the inequality. Right, we have x is less than or equal to b on this side, but there's no number on the left side. So just like before, we can think of that left side then as being, in this case, negative infinity. Right, it wouldn't be infinity on the left side because that's going towards smaller numbers, so we would use negative infinity when we have to fill in that space on the left. So our interval notation would be negative infinity, comma, b. Right, like I said on that last example, the infinities always get that curved parentheses. Right, you can never actually reach negative infinity. b, since x can be less than or equal to b, right, that equal sign means b gets the square bracket. And then when we draw this on the graph, right, we do a filled in circle for b because b is included, and then x is less than or equal to b, and the numbers less than on the number line go towards the left. All right, so that would be our graph for x is less than or equal to b and for this interval notation. All right, so that's just a few examples of translating between the inequalities and the interval notations. I did do another video on this that's a little bit longer and goes into a little bit more detail, and I do a few more examples on it. So if this wasn't enough, you still have questions about it, check out that other video that I did, and you can see me explain it in a little more detail.